Now, today, we're going to be looking at an African poem, literature in English. So we have African poetry. Okay, we're looking at the grieved land, the grieved land in Africa, the grieved land in Africa by Neco. All right, the grieved land, grieved, the grieved land of Africa by Neco. The grieved lands of Africa. The grieved lands of Africa. Okay, so the first thing to look at is the brief background of the poet. We're going to consider the brief background of the poet. The brief background of the poet, after which we'll look at the poem itself. The poem itself. We're going to read the poem together. Then we'll look at the subject matter of the poem. Subject matter of the poem. Then 4, we'll look at the poetic devices. We'll look at the poetic devices. 5, we'll also look at the themes of this poem. Yes, I think those 5. Now, class, the grieved lands of Africa. Be mindful of this title, the grieved, meaning a moment of sorrow, a moment of sadness. All right, that's what the word indicates. The grieved lands. Lands here refers to the people. All right, the country specifically. So land is used as a symbolism to represent the people. Look at it. The grieved country, the grieved people. And what people are we talking about? The people of Africa, specifically. All right. Neco. As you can see, name is portrayed like a Portuguese name. Neco. Do you understand? Of course, he is a poet from Angola. Angola is colonized by the Portuguese. Do you understand? So that was where he schooled. Neco schooled in Lisbon in Portugal. And was a politician and also a poet. Do you understand? So now Neco was fighting for the independence of Angola. Do you understand? Fighting for the independence of Angola. How Angola separated from the Europeans. Do you understand? Now, Neco was writing this particular poem as a way of expressing his dissatisfaction, his anger, his frustration on how the Europeans, which is specifically the Portuguese, colonized Angola. Do you understand? That's basically what Neco is talking about in this poem. Okay? Neco is late. Do you understand? He died as far back as 1976, thereabouts. Okay? So late. And remember, Neco is someone that moves the movement of what is called Angola independence. He wants Angola to be free from all sorts of suffering, deprivation, okay, colonization. He wants Angola to be totally free from this. And as a result of that, he said, the grieved lands, meaning the anger, the frustration, the sorrow, the sadness of the people of Africa. You see, Africa has gone through a lot in the hand of these Europeans. And then the Europeans will come with Christianity and education as a way of trying to, impoverish our mentality as Africans. So this is the brief background or the brief history of Neco. CME candidates, take note of this. And even if you're analyzing a poem in Waec, try as much as possible to say a little about the poet. Who is the poet to you? All right. Now, class, let's read the poem together. If you have this poem with you, please read along with me. We're going to be taking it stanza by stanza. All right. The grieved lands of Africa, in the tearful woes of ancient and modern slave. That line alone tells you how the people of Africa have been enslaved in both the modern and the ancient days. Even till now, the Europeans, they will have, slight influence on the Africans. Look at, in the tearful woes, that's sadness. In the tearful woes of ancient and modern slave. In the degrading sweat of impure dances, of other seas, grieved. This stanza one is trying to explain to you the sorrowful nature, okay, of the white people's behavior towards Africa. Look at stanza 2. The grieved lands of Africa, in the infamous sensation of the stunning perfume of the flower, okay, crushed in the forest. So that's telling you that this is a sense of deprivation of the African people. So by the wickedness of iron and fire. Can you see that now? Look at a symbolism of flour being crushed by what? Fire. So that flour represents or connotes something beautiful. And then the flour was now being destroyed by the Europeans using iron and fire. Said the grieved lands. So that means at every moment in which the European displayed or performed a particular action, it always sends a message of grief to the Africans. Do you understand? So this poet, Neco, is using the storyline of Angola to project every other African country because he believes that other African countries are passing through similar situation of colonization, suffering, and deprivation. Now look at stanza 3. He said, the grieved lands of Africa, soon undone, in jingling of jailers' keys, and in the stifled laughter and victorious voice of lament, and in the unconscious brilliance of hidden sensation of the green lands of Africa, alive in themselves and with us, alive. This is an awakening. That is, the poet as at this time is calling for an awakening, an awareness on how things can be done. Said, they bubble up in dreams, decked with dances by baobabs over balances, by the antelope in a perpetual alliance of everything that lives. Okay? Now, next stanza, they shout out the sound of life. This is talking about how the people no longer bear this deprivation. As a result of that, they have to come out, they have to talk, they have to shout, they have to scream. about what is going on. So they shout out the sound of life. Shout it. Even the corpses thrown up by the Atlantic in portrait offerings of incoherence and death, and in the clearness of rivers. They live the grieved lands of Africa in the harmonious sound of conscience contained in the honest blood of men. Can you see? This particular um, stanza is talking about death. You know, even when they died, they are still being remembered of their good deeds. I mean, the innocent African people that died. Neco is talking about that. And then talked about in the strongest desire of men, in the sincerity, in the pure and simple rightness of the stars' existence. They live. The grave lands of Africa, because we are living and are imperishable particles of the grave lands of Africa. So here, the poets had to conclude by regarding fellow Africans who are still alive, who were able to survive the European manipulation or maltreatment. Okay, the poet is calling the attention that they are now imperishable particles. Do you understand? Though they are the grave land of Africa because they are living. Do you understand? So this is a poem basically that would call your attention to all sorts of maltreatment. So let's look at the subject matter. The subject matter. So now the subject matter here the poet expresses his sadness on the maltreatment of the Africans by the colonizers using Angola as a reference. Do you understand? Was using Angola as a reference to reach out to every other fellow African country on the maltreatment of the Europeans. So who are they? The colonizers. They use education and religion as a weapon to becloud the African sense of reasoning. The Africans' sense of reasoning. Okay, that's why it is said that religion is the opium of the people. The white people who even brought the religion are moderating their practices, unlike Africans that will make it so prominent. You know, that's what Neco here is expressing, that they used education and religion as a weapon to becloud the African sense of reasoning. Okay? Sense of reasoning and perception. Okay? That's what he's talking about. Lands refer to the people of Africa. The people of Africa. Okay? The poem portrays the maltreatment or suffering condition of the Africans or of the people. So let's look at the poetic devices in this poem. The poetic devices in this poem. Number one, you have metaphor. Okay? Metaphor. Some lines in this poem are metaphoric in nature. Some lines in this poem are metaphoric in nature. And let's look at those lines. You can see many expressions in this poem are metaphoric. Look at lines 2, lines 3. Okay? Some lines are metaphoric in nature. Metaphoric. For example, lines 2, lines 3, lines 8, lines 11, 10, 14, and so on. If you observe most of these lines in the poem, you see that they are what? They are metaphoric. 2, repetition. Repetition. Some lines were repeated. If you look at line 6, 12, 16, and so on. Number 3, look at alliteration. That's the repetition of consonant sounds in a line of a poem. Alliteration. Look at lines 16 and so on. Personification. Some lines, most of the words are personified. For example, look at where you have the wickedness of iron and fire. Iron and fire cannot be wicked. Okay? The wickedness is an attribute of a human. So we don't expect iron and fire to be wicked. So the wickedness of iron and fire. Okay? So it simply means that iron and fire were given the attribute of human being, which is wickedness. Another one is the honest blood. A blood can never be honest. The honest blood. Okay? So blood is personified. That is, it is given the attribute of a human, which is honest or honesty. Okay? So the fifth one is a lot of paradox. A paradox means a statement that appears unusual, unreal, all right? That's a paradox. But in deeper reading, it reveals understanding. For instance, if you say the child is the father of the man, how can the child be the father of the man? You can see that at first instance, the statement does not make sense to you. But if you look at it closely, the child being the father of the man simply means that when the child eventually grows up, which means that the man will have been old by then, the child will eventually be the father of the man by taking care of the man. I hope it is clear to you now. So that's paradoxical, meaning a statement that appeared absurd at first, but at an in-depth analysis shows that it is true and believable. Okay, so some statements are paradoxical. Look at a leader who knows how to follow. Okay, followers mindful of their rights to lead. That's that. 6, 6, we have, all right, enjambment. Another word for enjambment is called run online. What does run online means? A particular sentence run into another sentence. The meaning of a particular sentence runs into another sentence without any break at all, such as full stop or a comma. Do you understand? There's a flow of sentence across each line of the poem. That's run online or enjambment. Okay? So these are the poetic devices, 6 of them. What are the themes? Okay? What are the themes? The themes in this poem. The themes in this poem. Number 1, we have exploitation. Exploitation. 2, we have disappointment and frustration. Disappointment and frustration. Number 3, optimism and hope in adversity. Optimism and hope in adversity. 4, grief, sorrow, and poverty. All right. These are the 4 thematic structure of this poem. All right, class. Thank you so much for your time, for your attention. All right. See you next week. Remain blessed. Ensure to study as well too. YouTubers, TikTok. Yes, it should be. Land is a symbolism of people or country. Yes, you can add it. There are actually many more, though. Do you understand? But I just listed 6 of them. So symbolism should be part of it. Land is a symbolism for people and country. Yeah, so you can add as many more. You can add as many more as possible. Okay? Thank you for your time, your attention, and keep learning. Yes, please click on the link in our bio to always join our class regularly. Yes, and also ensure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Bye-bye.